Hello and welcome to a demonstration of LastPass Identity. Before we get really deep into it, let's at first cover what we'll be talking about today. We'll start off with an overview of what LastPass Identity is, before we move on to what a typical admin will experience throughout their journey, from day one up until the moment that they start adding their first users. We'll then proceed to talk about what the experience is like for a typical end user using LastPass Identity. And we'll finish off with some helpful resources that you can use to proceed forward. More devices, applications, networks, and users increase the complexity of managing and protecting user access in your business. While employees just want to work efficiently without having to remember unique, complex passwords for every single application, IT needs to ensure the proper controls are in place to protect the company. The challenge is there's an array of applications, from legacy to on-premise and mobile, all working throughout the business, and not all of them are managed by corporate IT. There are also employees working in the corporate network, those working from home, some employees working from corporate devices, and others personal. Well, the list goes on. How is IT supposed to manage access for every single entry point when each user, application, and device is diverse? That's why we've built LastPass Identity, to provide a simple control and unified visibility across every access point to your business, with an intuitive access and adaptive authentication experience that works on everything from the cloud and mobile apps to legacy on-premise tools. We've done this through integrating our industry-leading password manager, a single sign-on portal, including app catalog of about 1,200 and more SSO SAML integrations, and adaptive authentication. So IT can manage access in a centralized solution while employees simply access their work. LastPass Identity combines our new MFA offering, which is an adaptive authentication solution that leverages biometric and contextual factors to go beyond standard 2FA, to ensure only the right users are accessing the right data at the right time. Examples of biometrics include a fingerprint swipe, facial recognition, or even a voice as mechanism to log in. Contextual factors are based on circumstances of your login, such as geolocation, time, or IP address. So, for example, if I go to Germany for work, the first time that I send a request from there, LastPass MFA may flag this as suspicious. However, as I keep sending requests from Germany, the app will eventually learn that this is a normal action and will no longer flag this as a suspicious activity. That's the value of LastPass Identity, adapting with your users. Risky transactions will have additional friction, whereas employees need to seamlessly access their work. It's increased security without the increased complexity. So in LastPass Identity, there are either users or admins. Users are anyone who can access anything given in a LastPass account, and admins are essentially users, but just with special privileges and access to the admin dashboard. So there are two steps for getting your account set up as a new user. You'll at first get an email from LastPass Identity, and a second, an email from LastPass Identity to set up your multi-factor app. When you're first invited, look out for those two emails. LastPass Identity primarily functions through the virtue of the browser extensions, which you'll see here in my browser toolbar. Through a single download, you'll have the LastPass extension installed on all browsers detected on the device, including IE, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and Opera. LastPass is supported on Mac, Windows, and Linux, and we have apps for Android, iOS, and Windows Phone. We recommend imaging the software out to all of your desktops, or you can let end users download it themselves. You also decide how user accounts will be created. We'll talk more about provisioning shortly. Most users will download the software, click on the browser extension as we see here, fill in their credentials, and the LastPass icon will turn red once they're logged in. From there, LastPass will be in the background filling out credentials as they just go about their day-to-day. We'll talk more about that as we dive deeper into the Vault and Admin dashboard, and we'll start to talk more about SSO and MFA in these circumstances. LastPass Identity also excels at password sharing. So let's jump into the Vault to see exactly what a LastPass account could look like. Here we get to see all the credentials that I have saved within my account. These credentials can be utilized by me, they can be automatically filled or stored for later usage, and I can share credentials with my colleagues. To share credentials, on the lower left side, select the Sharing Center. From here, you'll be able to create a shared folder. You can add a new shared folder by clicking on that plus icon, typing in the shared folder's name. In this case, I'm going to be making this one for my engineers. Clicking create, and the shared folder will be created. I can then hover over this newly created shared folder, click on manage, and I'll be able to add the necessary teams. I can simply either click here and select one of the top selected options. Maybe I want my product team on here, or I can even start typing in the first few characters of an email address to add these people. To set their permissions, I can either check or uncheck these boxes. For example, any sites that I put inside this shared folder, these users will perhaps be able to only read these credentials, meaning LastPass will fill these in. They are not able to edit, delete, or change any sites within this shared folder. I can go one step more secure and hide all passwords being provided to these users that I'm inviting. Thus, LastPass will be filling out the credentials and the password will not be exposed. However, if I trust these individuals, I can make them co-administrators with me. When I click on save, we'll see that these individuals are added, and we can come back to this at any time and we're able to change those permissions that we had just set as such. So as we demonstrated, LastPass Identity simplifies password management for your employees. In a minute, we'll compare with what we're going to see in the admin dashboard to what we'll see in the single sign-on MFA dashboard. As we navigate to the admin dashboard, let me click on this from the left side of our vault, the admin console. So let's notice that the admin console has SSO and MFA, and it is toggled with blue. Is the circle solid or is it a hollow circle? If it's filled in, that means SSO and MFA have successfully been configured. So let's dive into the admin dashboard of this password management side to see how simple it is to manage access for every point of entry in your business. So admins can launch that password manager admin dashboard at any time. This admin dashboard is a web-based portal that provides centralized oversight of all employee LastPass accounts and gives the company control of employee password behavior. This allows you to eliminate password reuse and enforce a strong password policy throughout the organization. This dashboard gives you a summary of how the company is performing. Like we can see, there are certain users with weak security challenges, some users who haven't invited yet, and as I invite more, I'll see the average security strength. You can also track how well you're doing and end users are adopting the LastPass Identity tool for password management. This dashboard does show how you're performing in terms of password security, I should mention again. We can see the security scores at any point. As a general rule of thumb, we want to make sure that we're configuring our LastPass Identity environment before we start inviting end users into the account. So as you prepare to deploy LastPass Identity, let's start configuring things. By clicking on Settings on the left side, and then on Policies, we'll be taken to a page where we can add, edit, or delete any of our 100 security policies that we can take advantage of to create and enforce the perfect security environment. Maybe that's high, medium, or low, depending on your company's requirements. For example, by default, LastPass is accessible anywhere, but we can set a policy that restricts where people can access LastPass. Similarly, I may want to implement a new policy. For example, to add a new policy, I click on Add Policy on the top right, and I know that I want to select a policy called Do Not Reuse Master Password. This will make it so LastPass users are not able to reuse the, for example, 5 most recently used master passwords when they change it. I can apply policies granularly. I can have it apply to all users, have this policy apply to just a specific list of users, or I can have this apply to every single user except a certain list of users. You'll need to define what these users are if you want to add them to the policy. So just type in the first few characters, or you can select it from this drop-down menu, click Save, and save again to finally implement that policy. Users can be added or updated to LastPass. We have a lot of mechanisms to carry that out. Sure, you can go to the users page and you can start manually adding users, but that is not scalable. It's excellent to be able to do, but we also would like to let you know that from day one, the best practice is to go to Settings and check out our directory integration. So with LastPass Identity, you can download a directory integration for your AD. We also have integrations with Azure AD, Okta, OneLogin, if you're savvy for the LastPass provisioning or API. And finally, we also have federated login. So that way you can have your users set up with your federated server also be able to federate into LastPass Identity. Again, emphasizing the simplicity of leveraging existing systems and saving you time ramping up. Whenever you are ready and you feel like your policies have been configured within this side, you may want to jump into starting to integrate with your current directory system. Let's move to talk about the SSO and MFA dashboard as we start to comprehensively talk about policies within LastPass Identity. To navigate there, just simply click on this SSO or MFA option on the lower left of the admin dashboard. Immediately you'll notice in terms of a LastPass administrator, terms you should be familiar with. Our recommendation of clicking on this graduation cap on the top right corner of your SSO MFA screen, you can see some recommendations that we give in order to give you the best start for your SSO MFA integration. You can see here that I already have checked off a few of these, so I can keep track of where I'm at in terms of my rollout. Going back to this left navigation menu, I mentioned that there are some terms we're familiar with, like users. Should know that users that are already in the password management side will be automatically pulled over to the SSO MFA side. We also see a term we're familiar with policy. Directories existed on the other side as well, and reports. But there's also some information here regarding applications. And we'll even see a My Cloud Apps button located on the SSO MFA dashboard. Let's start talking about how users are within this SSO and MFA instance. So SSO, of course, does not leverage a password, which is why there's a distinct portal for this. So to check on an existing user, we can go to Users and Users and see that these are the current people who are in here. We can click on a user's object and we can re-invite them, suspend their access, delete, edit any attributes, see what assigned policies or applications are to them, and then we can save all the work that we've done. Again, we highly recommend that you integrate with an existing directory so that way your users can be pulled into the password management and SSO MFA side from a single deployment. It should be noted that policies from the LastPass password manager side do not get pulled over to the SSO MFA side. And that's by design, because with the password management, you'll be restricting the passwords themselves. Whereas with SSO, there's no password required. So in order to access the passwords, they'll follow the same workflow. And then to follow the SSO and MFA, we'll have additional ways that we can set a secure policy around their accessibility of web applications. Speaking of web applications, let's dive into that next. Under Applications, let's click on Web App. Admins can choose from over 1,200 web app integrations that we have. To configure a new SSO application, simply go to this page that I've gone on and click on Add Application on the top right. Admins can follow our detailed step-by-step guides to configure each application. In this demonstration, I can show you that I can configure, for example, an app like AHA. So I just select this. The next accordion menu pops up, and so because I've selected the app AHA, I'll need to follow their documentation and know what they want. So I can quickly copy any of these items to my clipboard, download the certificate, and upload it to that AHA SSO instance over there. From the service provider, we will be required to have their ACS, so be sure to type that in this section here. We'll talk more about what's baked into this advanced setup, but go ahead and click Save and Assign, where we'll be able to assign this AHA web app to a list of users, a group. I'm going to be selecting multiple users in this case, and clicking Save so that it is configured. We'll see a notification on the bottom right showing me that my new web app has successfully been added. As a pro tip, be sure to assign an application to yourself for testing. Why we ask you to do that is so that way you can test it on yourself, see that it works as you desire, and then you'll be able to roll it out to other users. And that is our best practice. Let's hop on over to the end user side. End users can access web apps two different methods. You will have available to you a My Cloud Apps section from your admin dashboard, and from your vault, all end users will have a Cloud Apps button available to them. The quickest and easiest way to access your SSO and MFA solution, so you can click on that Cloud Apps, and here we can see a dashboard available to them. This interface simplifies your end user's login experience, and at no point are they presented with a password needing to be filled again. So for example, from this dashboard, I can just click on my Dropbox web app here. You'll see that I'm presented with step-up authentication, which shows you that I can log into this web app using multi-factor authentication. We'll demonstrate that more in a second. You'll see that there are also some apps like this AHA instance, which is currently grayed out. If I click on it, I can see that I am restricted. It says that this is because of a geolocation. The second way end users can access an SSO application is by navigating directly to the website. So here we can see that I am on Dropbox.com. I can start to type in the name of my account. As I pasted my email address into this field, I see that Dropbox has already identified that this is a single sign-on enabled user. This is because of the LastPass integration with Dropbox. When I click on continue, I'll easily be able to sign into this application. So in review, there are two ways end users can log into an SSO application, either by this launchpad known as the Cloud Apps, or they can also log into the website by navigating there without breaking up their workflow in their day-to-day routine. Going back to our SSO and MFA dashboard, let's talk about some policies. So going over here to the policies, we can assign specific ones such as geofencing, IP, and access. Let's talk about geofencing for a second. So geofencing allows for you to select designated or prohibited areas for end users to access your SSO applications. For example, I can click on this green zone icon to create a new green zone, an approved workspace. I'm currently located in California. I'm going to be entering my street address right here. As I select it, you'll notice that there is a bubble which I can expand and retract to designate the acceptable areas for logging into an SSO application. I'll show you how that works later on. But this is essentially the area that you designed to be approved, because this is a green geofence, for logging into an SSO app. You can optionally add a tag name in this section here. Click on Save whenever you are done. You'll see that I get a warning message just letting me know that I should probably set up a policy first. We'll do that next. But as I'm talking about green areas, the same can be said about red areas for geofencing. These are restricted areas that you can define, which prohibits your end users from logging into an SSO app from that designated area. IP addresses work the same way as geofencing. We can add additional IP addresses that are whitelisted and OK by clicking on this green Create Whitelisted IP Range button. We already find your current IP address, so you can just copy that to your clipboard by clicking on the icon and pasting it. When you're done, just click Add, and you'll see that this has been created for me. So I can go in here with my geofencing and IP addresses. I can start whitelisting and blacklisting anything that I know that I want to include. These geofencing and IP policies will later be utilized for an access policy. What is an access policy? So this is essentially our way of managing the restrictions that within a certain web application, or it can be a comprehensive access policy prohibiting end users. And we'll see how geofencing and IP applies. To add a new access policy, click on New Policy here and name it. So I can create a general policy for accessing SSO apps. I can select from a list of previously incorporated geofences or IP ranges, and you'll see that the policy level is set to general access. This is excellent, but we can also get really granular with our access policies. I know I'm creating a general one, but what if I wanted to create one for Dropbox specifically? So you could only access Dropbox from these approved locations, and we must select Dropbox. We can even take this one step farther. by saying that these IP addresses are okay, and we can set a specific time range for our end users to access the Dropbox application. Normal business hours may be a great idea, and be sure to set your time zone as well so that it adheres to your policies. When you're ready, click on Save. You'll be able to assign which users this is applied to, and click on Save again. So that way, the next time an end user tries to navigate to this Dropbox app, they'll either be permitted or restricted based off of this policy, just as we saw with the grayed out icon. So we've checked out geofencing, we've seen IP, and we've talked about access policies. Up to this point, we've really been exploring what the admin experience looks like. We also got to see a little bit about what end users get to experience whenever they log into an SSO application. So let's dive a little bit deeper. Users will only need to navigate in their browsers to the web page of the app you've configured or to go to their launchpad. They'll be prompted for MFA if you'd like, or automatically rejected access due to these policies that we've configured. To tell you more about multi-factor authentication policies within SSO of LastPass, we'll close the policies and we'll navigate back to applications. Going back to web app, we can find one of our pre-existing web apps, and we can go back to the settings. I promised you earlier I would talk more about the advanced setup. So under there, if we check this box for step-up authentication, this will ensure that if an end user is trying to access this Dropbox application, they must then authenticate using their mobile device an approved authentication method. What authentication methods do we offer? That takes us to our policies and authentication. From here, we can select any approved or prohibited authentication measures. So I can go in here and uncheck any ones I don't want, but personally I enjoy all of these. It still gives me the layers of multi-factor, but also adheres to user experience. So these are automatically approved once you check or uncheck them. Again, we can apply these different authentication measures by going to a web app, selecting it, and going to the advanced setup and step-up authentication. It should be mentioned that before we dive into the end user experience, there are other sorts of policies and applications that LastPass identities can work with. We can work with VPN and legacy SSO systems. We can also work with policies around account recovery. So you can set in which ways users can recover. We'll dive into reports and directories a little bit later on, but I really want to focus on the end user experience.
Upon invitation, employees will receive a welcome email prompting them to download the LastPass MFA mobile app. As a first step, we recommend the end user creates their account on the mobile device. The rest of the steps are as follows. Download and install the LastPass MFA app from the App Store. Then, open the email and proceed to Start Registration. After being redirected to the QR code, use the app to scan it. Once the phone is paired, continue to the activation and activate the LastPass MFA app by allowing location, service, notification, and Bluetooth. You'll be redirected back to the LastPass MFA app, set up your biometrics as instructed, and as a general best practice, and in order to set up face and voice recognition, please allow LastPass MFA to access your phone's camera and mic. Keep in mind that you need to set up at least 2 authentication methods to be able to proceed with registration. Now let's start with Touch or Face ID. So please note the process is different for iOS and Android users, and our knowledge base will guide you through the simple separate steps. Proceed with the steps given to set up for fingerprint or Face ID. And once you're finished, go ahead and test it. Secondly, set up your face authentication next. Find a well-lit place and avoid dark places. Direct sunlight or strong backlighting. Click on Start Face Setup to get started. Face the camera and follow the instructions. Move your head right and left. Nod your head. Finally, show us that beautiful smile when instructed. Once you're done, face the camera and test the face authentication. Bingo. Optionally, you can set up voice authentication. For this to work, you'll need to find a relatively quiet place. click on Start Recording to set up voice biometrics. Choose a passphrase and repeat it 3 times. Once done, test the voice authentication by repeating your passphrase. And finally, setting up pattern authentication. Choose a pattern by swiping your finger between at least 4 dots. You will need to enter this pattern 3 times, so make sure you test the pattern for authentication before moving forward. After you've chosen 2 out of these multiple methods, whichever your administrator permits you to use via an authentication policy, the end user registration is complete. The next step is for you to navigate to Dropbox and attempt to log in. Enter your Dropbox email into the email address field. You'll be redirected to our next page where you'll receive a notification on your mobile device. Check your phone and click on the notification. Note, if the notification does not appear, simply open the LastPass MFA app and click on Refresh. The app will show you the authentication requested information, including the date, time, login page, your computer, browser, and username. So carefully review that information presented and then press the Accept button. So following this, the app will ask you to enter your biometrics. Follow one of the authentication options and you'll be successfully logged in.
Here are some examples of what users will see when their login is approved versus a denied login. When approving the login in the LastPass MFA app, it will display the status circle in blue. This represents that a login was successfully authenticated. At any time, you can reject the login. Doing so, it will display the status circle as red, representing the request was denied. It can also show red for any suspicious activities, unfamiliar location, logging in from a new device, or no response. Lastly, if you see the status circle as yellow, this means the authentication has failed due to a product error with the login. Let's talk about how we're able to prove the value of LastPass identities to you and those on your team. What is your stance on reporting and auditing? Are you of the mind that the more the better? Let's dive into the admin experience whenever we're gathering reports. To start with, let's go back to the admin dashboard for password management. When we go to reports, we're able to see that we have an entire log of all user activity. We log everything that occurs in LastPass. So everything is captured and you're able to search and filter as desired, extending as well the time frame for which you're searching for certain reports. Similarly to how users are reported, you can get admin reports as well. So we can see when administrators add policies, delete users, or create new implementations. These last 2, the security report and login report, are excellent at proving the value of LastPass identity as well. This helps with the adoption metrics as we are able to see clear-cut analytics in terms of how users are complying with certain aspects of LastPass. Have they been active for a certain amount of time? Do they have 5 or more weak passwords? But again, these are really important if you're going to be measuring your adoption and overall performance of LastPass identity. So similarly to how it works in the password manager side, let's go over to the SSO MFA side and talk about reporting briefly. Under reports and admin, we can similarly get a log of all administrative actions taken on the SSO MFA side. So we can see the time, the action carried out, and the admin who carried out said request. Users will give us an overview of what users did at certain times, where they tried to access, were they successful, and the method that they used in order to try and log in. Applications get really specific as well. When we're digging in, we can see the IP address, the time, what sort of browser was used, and the user that was carrying out these options. It's best practice to really utilize admin, user, and app, whereas notifications and SAML are less often used. Highly recommend checking this out. Again, we have all information regarding the LastPass password manager side as well as the SSO MFA side on our knowledge base. So let's tie together everything and move forward with some best practices for deploying LastPass identity. It's dangerous to go alone, so take these suggested recommendations with you. As you move forward with deploying LastPass identity, invite a second admin to ensure someone else has access to the admin consoles if you are away or on vacation. Next, that you can always adjust policies and enforce stricter ones down the road. Be sure to assign an SSO or MFA policy to yourself and test it out before you are assigning that to other users. Always have a pilot group with representatives from different departments to ensure the settings that you have chosen do fit well with your organization as well. Test your preferred user management method as soon as possible, getting that directory integration so you can ramp up quickly. And lastly, communicate early and often with your end users, and don't forget about them after you've provisioned their licenses. Make sure they're ready and on the lookout for the LastPass Identity email and the LastPass Identity email for the mobile MFA download. You can also consider posting some information within your intranet and key trainings in there as well. Speaking of resources, to wrap up, we do want to remind you that as a LastPass Identity Administrator, you have access to our customer care and technical support teams. You can call in for support during the work week or visit our support site and community site online. For self-service resources, we have those as well, or you can submit an inquiry online as well. Thank you for watching today's demo, and we are greatly looking forward to securing every access point through integrated password management, strengthening user authentication with you through MFA, and single sign-on with LastPass Identity.